Exposed, the heartwarming speech that turned 15K lies into an incredible life-changing moment. Jake stood under the sprawling oak trees of Maplewood, where leaves danced like flames in the crisp autumn air. But even the bright colors couldn't brighten the heaviness hanging in his heart. He had lost his anchor, his beloved wife, and now, as a 35-year-old mechanic with 2 lively children, he felt like he was running on empty. The bills kept piling up, and his hands were forever stained with grease, a constant reminder of the struggle to provide a stable life filled with love and laughter. This cold morning brought whispers that chilled him to the bone. One of the local charities, led by a couple he once admired for their service to veterans, had supposedly raised $15,000. The money was meant to support veterans, a cause Jake held dear following his own father's service. But now, rumors dripped like a slow leak from a rusty pipe: wrongdoing, deceit, and betrayal. It wasn't just about the missing money, it was about trust, about the ideals his wife had cherished: kindness, unity. He felt a fire ignite within him as anger simmered just below the surface. The weight of his anxiety threatened to buckle him. The judgment from the townsfolk seemed magnified, their whispers of his struggles echoing in his mind. But something stirred within him. Fueled by a fierce sense of justice, Jake began to peel back the layers of deceit. The deeper he went, the heavier the burden felt. But surrender wasn't an option. As the community fundraiser approached, Jake found his footing. In a moment that felt like it could change everything, he stepped up to the mic, his heart racing. The crowd hushed, and he saw their anxious faces. What would they think of him? He had their attention, and it was now or never. "Everyone, my friends," he began, his voice trembling but firm. "We've lost sight of what truly matters. My wife showed me that hard work and community support make us stronger together. We need to gather our strengths, not let anger tear us apart." He paused, feeling the warmth of memories of his wife wash over him. "We have to stand up for those who fought for us. Forgiveness can heal. Love can bring us home." Jake scanned the crowd, witnessing the softening of faces, the glistening of tears. They leaned in, their hearts opening. He pressed on, the weight lifting as courage poured out. "Let us reclaim our trust in one another, in our veterans. They deserve our support, not our doubt. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Jake finished, silence enveloped the crowd before winesweet applause broke through. He felt hope blossoming. Just then, a local businesswoman stood up, her voice clear and strong. "I'll match every donation tonight." The crowd erupted again, and for a moment, hope glimmered brighter. Yet, a shadow crossed over Jake's heart. Would they see beyond his struggles? Would past judgments fade or linger? Would this be a turning point, not just for him but for Maplewood? The urgent air of uncertainty hung thick, leaving Jake on the edge wondering if this moment could truly ignite change in a community longing for healing. As the applause echoed, Jake felt a surge of energy coursing through him. He saw the glimmer of hope in the eyes around him. People were leaning in closer, drawn to the message of unity and respect. But beneath the surface, uncertainty clawed at him. Could one moment really shift the narrative? Slowly, he stepped away from the mic, letting the applause wash over him as he retreated to the safety of the sidelines. His friend Mark, a towering figure with a heart of gold, approached him, a grin plastered across his face. "You did it, man. Look at them. They believe in you." Jake chuckled dryly, wiping the back of his hand across his forehead. "Yeah, but what if it fades? What if they turn away when the reality hits? The truth about the money, Mark." Mark's expression shifted, concern replacing the cheer. "We'll get to the bottom of it. Together, all right?" The assurance in Mark's voice was a lifeline, pulling Jake back from the brink of despair. He had to remind himself that change was gradual, that communities could build themselves back up if they just tried. The night went on, and the atmosphere was electric. One by one, townsfolk dug deep into their pockets, donations flowing in like a river after a storm. Jake felt a flicker of warmth radiate in his chest, a small flame of optimism fighting against his heartache as he watched the spirit of generosity blossom. Then came a clear voice from the back of the crowd. What happens to the money if the charity's not on the up and up? The question hung heavy in the air, causing murmurs to break out like distant thunder. Jake's heart sank as he noticed the faces begin to shift again, uncertainty creeping back. That voice, it belonged to Judith, a sharp-witted skeptic known for her no-nonsense attitude. She never minced words, and Jake could feel the crowd waver at her challenge. Judith, this isn't about them anymore. It's about us. It's about who we want to be as a community, Jake said, his voice steady despite the internal turmoil. Judith crossed her arms, skepticism etched on her face. Talking is one thing, Jake. Proving it is another. You were all twisted in whispers back there, and it's not that easy to lose the shadows. And I won he shot back. Not if we face them together. If the charity doesn't come through, we'll find our own way to support our veterans. We owe them that. We owe this community that. A wave of murmurs followed his declaration, uncertainty mingling with the hope he had sparked earlier. Jake stood firm, heart pounding as he faced Judith and the curious crowd leaning in. Then the unexpected happened. An older gentleman stepped forward, eyes gleaming with conviction. You know what? I'm with you, Jake, he called out. If we all look out for each other, maybe we can be the change. One by one, more voices lifted in support, fanning the flames of resolve within him. Jake felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes, moved by the vulnerability of this moment, but Judith wasn't ready to back down. Let us see how long this lasts, then. Actions speak louder than words. Her declaration felt like a weight in the air, a challenge that ignited his determination. Feeling the collective energy shift, Jake knew the journey was only beginning. They were at a crossroads, mere whispers of doubt still looming over their battle for trust. Would they rise together, or would the shadows of betrayal consume them? Jake's heart raced as he pondered the fierce path ahead. He couldn't help but wonder, would he have the strength to lead them through the storm? Across the crowd, the flickering lights of hope danced, leaving one lingering thought: was this community ready to embrace the truth, or would it crumble beneath the weight of its secrets? Jake took a deep breath, letting the weight of Judith's challenge settle in his chest. She was right, words alone wouldn't heal years of doubt and betrayal. The warmth of support moments ago felt fragile now, almost like a candle flickering in a storm. All right, let us not just talk about change. Let us make it real, Jake declared, his voice rising above the crowd. I want to form a community board, a place where we can all come together to ensure our intentions are clear. We'll hold each other accountable, and we'll dig deeper into where the money goes. More whispers rippled through the crowd. He noticed Judith's eyebrows raise in surprise, perhaps even begrudging respect. Sensing the shift, he pushed forward. For once, let us ensure that the money doesn't just vanish into empty promises. Mark stepped up next to Jake, punctuating his words with a nod. I'll be on this board, too. We need voices that matter. We'll reach out to vets in need and prioritize transparency. Transparency, huh? Judith chimed in, her tone now more curious than confrontational. There was something encouraging in her challenge, a stir of hope in her deep skepticism. Exactly. Jake exclaimed. This is about more than just funds. It's about trust. If we can rally together to support our veterans, then we can rebuild this community. We've weathered storms before, we can do it again. The atmosphere began to shift. More people stepped forward, their faces brightening with newfound intentions. They began discussing possibilities: community events, clinics, outreach efforts. It was as if the energy that had poured into donations was now being redirected into actionable plans. As laughter and ideas filled the air, a woman raised her hand. I can organize fundraisers. We can host barbecues. People love food and fun, and we can all pitch in. The crowd cheered, and Jake felt his heart lift. This was no longer just an audience, it had transformed into a community united, each voice resonating with purpose. But amid the collective excitement, Jake couldn't shake Judith's doubt. "Sure, this is good," Judith interjected again, her arms unfolding as she moved toward him. "But what happens when you face real resistance? Not talk, but the real challenges like anger and fear? How will you handle that?" Her questions were sharp, and Jake appreciated that. Facing the specter of doubt, he felt the familiar tightening of nerves in his stomach. "We'll handle it together. That's the key. Community isn't just the good times, it's facing the hard truths side by side," he replied, the confidence in his voice growing stronger as he spoke. The evening wore on, long after the sun dipped below the horizon. Laughter turned into planning sessions, and joy morphed into promises of action. But as he glanced toward Judith, he sensed that she wasn't quite finished. "Just remember, Jake, words mean nothing without follow-through. If you stumble, remember I'll be here waiting to see if you stand back up," Judith said. Her voice was steady, but there was something softer in her tone now, almost vulnerable. "Then I'll stand up for you too, Judith," he shot back, his conviction unwavering. The crowd cheered, and as they began to disperse, Jake felt the burden of uncertainty lift, if only slightly. Plans were brewing, hope was billowing, and he could almost taste the sweetness of change in the air. But as Jake walked home that night, a nagging thought replayed in his mind. What if they did stumble? What if the ghosts of the past came back to haunt them? Jake's heart raced. Would this community, once fractured, truly find its way back? Or would it forever remain a shadow of lost trust? The answers felt just out of reach, stirring with potential yet tempered by fear. With dawn still hours away, Jake pondered the weight of the road ahead. Was he truly prepared to lead this community into uncharted waters, or would he be the one to bring the ship down? The questions lingered, heavy and pregnant with possibility. The sun broke through the horizon the next morning, casting light on the town still pausing to awaken. Jake rubbed the sleep from his eyes and reflected on the previous night. The flickering excitement of hope hung in the air, but anxiety gnawed at him. It was one thing to rally a community, it was another to sustain it. As he brewed coffee, he replayed Judith's words. Words mean nothing without follow-through. Trouble was, he didn't know how to move forward from here. How do you build trust when trust had broken down so many times? Around noon, Jake decided to meet Mark at the local park. The place was often a hub of activity, filled with families enjoying the sunshine and kids zooming by on their bikes. He hoped the lively atmosphere would calm his nerves. "You ready to get this thing rolling?" Mark asked, a grin forming across his face. Jake nodded, though he felt a tangle of nerves in his stomach. "Yeah, just wish I had a clear plan. I want to make sure we don't fizzle out. This has to matter." "I get it," Mark said, leaning against a bench. "But trust takes time, man. We need to show people we mean business." Jake bit his lip, his mind racing. What could he do that would assure people this wasn't just another empty promise? As they discussed ideas, the bellies of the clouds above darkened, threatening rain. But it didn't dampen their spirits. One idea led to another, bouncing between them like kids in the park. "What if we organize a community meeting this weekend?" Mark suggested. "Gather everyone again, show them how we're progressing." "Yes." Jake felt a pulse of energy. "We can present our plans, discuss funding transparency, and get feedback. Maybe even invite some veterans to share their stories." "Absolutely. Real voices. Real stories," Mark added, excitement igniting his features. Still buzzing with new energy, Jake knew they had something to share. They finalized the meeting details and set out to create flyers. The anticipation buzzed beneath Jake's skin, urging him to act. The week unfolded rapidly. Flyers dotted the community, and encouragement swirled in the air. Jake found himself at the center, coordinating meetings and checking in on everyone's tasks. Judith's skepticism lingered in the back of his mind, but the support from Mark and the community stripped away some of the weight. But the night before the big meeting, Jake tossed and turned. What if no one showed? Or worse, what if they all came? His vision crumbled, and ghosts of the past haunted him anew. He let the thoughts churn until he fell asleep, exhaustion finally taking over. Saturday morning dawned bright and beautiful. Families embraced the sunshine and joggers pounded the pavement as Jake stood outside the community center. His heart pounded wildly in his chest. Would they trust him? He took a steadying breath. One by one, people began to trickle in. Shadows of uncertainty flitted across their faces, yet glimmers of hope sparkled in their eyes. When Judith arrived, she caught his gaze. This time, she nodded, almost imperceptibly but unmistakably supportive. As the room filled, he felt the air thrum with energy, like the spark of electricity before a storm. Jake's heart raced as he stood before everyone, the community that had been fractured now united in one space. He cleared his throat, emotions bubbling to the surface. Thank you for coming. We are here today to talk about trust, to listen and share, and to stand together with each word. He sensed something crackle, like a fire igniting in a long-dormant hearth. But would it last? Would they allow themselves to believe, to hope again? As he glanced toward Judith, a familiar sense of determination gripped him. And somewhere in the back of his mind, that nagging question lingered: if this began to feel real, how would they all handle the fear that had kept them apart for so long? As he spoke, Jake yearned to know, would this transformative moment pave the way for healing, or would it expose the community's fractures once again? Jake took a deep breath, his gaze sweeping across the crowd and landing on familiar faces, some hopeful, some wary. Today isn't just about me or my ideas. It's about us, the people of this community. It's time we take charge of our story. His voice began to rise, fueled by the energy swirling in the room. We want to share our vision for revitalizing our town. But we also want to hear from you. Each of you knows the fabric of this community better than anyone. We need your voices. A hesitant murmur rippled through the crowd. It was the sound of hesitation and longing, like the rustle of leaves caught in the wind. Jake's heart raced, but he pressed on, driven by a mixture of desperation and hope. He saw Judith lean forward slightly, her eyes narrowed as she listened. He took that as a sign. We're proposing to create a community garden that brings people together. A place where families can gather, where children can learn about nature, where we can grow not only plants but connections. It's a small step, but every journey begins with one plant. Someone from the back shouted, and laughter broke the nervous tension. Jake smiled, letting that moment of levity sink in. Exactly. And it begins with us deciding to show up for one another. We need volunteers for this. We need ideas. What should our garden grow? And how can we make this a hub of activity in our town? As hands started to rise, Jake felt a rush of adrenaline. Each voice that chimed in added another thread to the fabric they were weaving together. A woman in the front stood up. I'd love to help design the space. Someone shouted, I can help with planting days. I've got tools. Let us have farmers markets. A man added, his voice booming with excitement. With each suggestion, he felt the weight of worry lift from his shoulders. This was what he needed: the reach for connection. This was healing. Suddenly, the doors swung open, and a figure stepped inside. It was Sarah, the artist who had painted the mural on the side of the old bakery, her vibrant colors still a mark of resilience in town. As she carved her way through the crowd, she looked both nervous and determined. Jake, she interrupted, her voice rising above the chatter, what if the garden was more than just a garden? What if it became a living canvas for all of us? An expression of what we've been through and what we aspire to be? The room quieted as her words lingered in the air. Jake could see the spark ignite, people leaning in, their imaginations taking flight. Art, community, healing. They were all tied together in a way he hadn't imagined possible. Sarah, that's brilliant. Jake exclaimed. Art can breathe life into spaces. It can tell our story and how we unite again. The crowd murmured in agreement, a wave of unity washing over them. As they continued to brainstorm, Jake couldn't help but notice Judith. Her expression softened, the skepticism now a glimmer of hope. In that moment, he knew something significant was unfolding, but as the ideas flowed and enthusiasm built, another part of him couldn't shake the fear that lurked in the background. Would they still be willing to stand together when challenges arose? Would the beauty of this moment withstand the trials ahead? As the meeting stretched into the evening, Jake felt hope blooming, yet the shadows of doubt crept closer. He was beginning to understand that building trust was just the first step. What would they do when they faced the storms of life again? In the buzz of newfound enthusiasm, one question lingered: could they nurture this fragile trust into something resilient, or was it destined to wither like a forgotten garden? With excitement hanging in the air and doubts brewing beneath, Jake wondered what the next challenge would be. The next few weeks morphed into a whirlwind of activity. The community garden began to take shape, not just in the minds of the townspeople but in the very soil of the old vacant lot. Jake and Sarah organized weekend gatherings that filled their evenings with laughter and purpose. Families turned up with shovels, children running through the dirt with laughter echoing behind them. That first afternoon together, under the bright sun, Jake felt alive. Each plant they sowed held more than just the promise of vegetables, it poured hope into their hearts. Judith had stepped up, embracing her role as a coordinator for the design. She meticulously crafted a plan that balanced play and productivity, intertwining art and nature seamlessly. One warm Saturday, as the sun dipped low in the sky, they all gathered to unveil the initial layout. Judith stood proudly in front of a colorful chart spread across a makeshift table. The crowd buzzed with anticipation as she pointed to different areas. Here is where we'll plant the herbs, and over there, we can set up the flower beds. And not to forget, this corner will be painted with the beautiful murals we all talked about. At first, the plan felt ambitious, but as the days passed, Jake witnessed a transformation. People admired Judith's vision and rallied behind it. Each corner of the garden whispered stories and shared dreams, binding them together with invisible threads. However, a sense of underlying tension continued to linger. The garden brought out the best in many, but it also resurfaced old wounds. Rumors swirled about funding, fueled by a neighbor's jealous whispers. What if they couldn't keep it up? What if the money they spent wasn't enough? The questions hovered just outside their little bubble of hope, always threatening to pop it. Jake felt the weight of uncertainty creeping closer as an unexpected message from the town council landed in his inbox. They were called for a public meeting to discuss the funding issues for the garden. Anxiety pooled in his stomach. He knew some would want to voice their doubts, that Judith's idealism might clash with the stark realities of finances. On the day of the meeting, the room felt heavier than usual. Billy, the town's treasurer, opened the discussion with a list of projected costs and an analysis of expenses. Murmurs filled the room. Jake watched Judith's face tighten as skepticism washed over her. Then, it was his turn to speak. Standing at the podium, he searched the crowd, locking eyes with familiar faces, those who had supported him, but also those wearing wary expressions. He remembered the laughter they shared planting the first seeds, the joy of watching children dive into the garden soil. Today, I'm not here to present a list of numbers, he said, his voice steadying as he gained confidence. I'm here to share the life that is already growing. We've seen it: neighbors coming together, families reuniting, and a community healing. Emotions swirled within him: fear, joy, and the hope that this would touch them all. Let us not just think about money, let us think about what we're building: a legacy. A place for generations to enjoy. If we cut funding, we'll be uprooting the very thing that connects us. People nodded, and he saw Judith's body relax, her belief reigniting. The words spilled out as the room quieted: let us support one another, not let fears dig us down like weeds. If we work together, we can grow this. As he finished, applause erupted, but Jake noticed the lingering tension. Not everyone was convinced. Just then, Judith stood up, waving her hands, filled with fire and conviction. Let us dream. Let us transform this legacy into something beautiful. Our garden has the power to inspire. Her voice rang with passion. The crowd responded, a collective murmur of agreement igniting more energy. But as excitement filled the air, Jake felt something darker in the background, looming yet unknown. The moment felt suspended, fragile. Jake took a deep breath, sensing the swell of emotions in the room. What next challenge would they face together? Would those doubts swallow them whole, or would they continue to rise? With the echo of Judith's challenge still resonating, Jake knew the next meeting would hold even more stakes. The air in the room was thick with anticipation as the next meeting loomed closer. Jake carried the weight of his previous speech with him like a protective charm. He'd felt the crowd's energy that night, their hopes shining through the fog of uncertainty, but doubts were still ripe for the picking. Judith buzzed around town, rallying more supporters, reminding everyone about the beauty they were building. Yet, whispers still followed her. In hushed tones, some recounted inaccuracies in their funding reports. Others doubted whether a community garden was really worth the effort when the town faced other pressing needs. Despite it all, Jake's resolve strengthened. After a long day at work, he met with Sarah and Judith late one evening to strategize. Sunlight softened into dusk outside the cafe. "We need a plan," he said firmly, leaning forward, the weight of the moment in his gravity. "We can't just hope they'll see our vision. We must show them what the garden means." Judith nodded, eyes glinting with determination. "Let us put together a presentation. Let us share stories, show images, and gather testimonies from the community. People must see the garden's impact on our lives." Sarah leaned back in her chair. "And what about the children? They can share their excitement." Jake's stomach fluttered. The thought of little hands clutching their drawings brought a warmth to his heart. "Yes. If we can get them involved, we'll appeal to every person in that room." As they devised their plan, Jake felt a flicker of light replace the growing anxiety. He could almost see people's faces as they passed around art supplies in the garden, a space alive and swirling with colors, laughter, and hope. The day of the meeting dawned, and Jake grappled with butterflies in his stomach as he set up a colorful display of the children's artwork. Judith put up posters with photos from their workdays, smiling faces and flourishing plants. For Jake, it embodied everything that had begun sprouting out of the soil: community, connection, and love. When the council members filed in, Jake felt a surge of adrenaline. But then, one of the skeptics, Mr. Thompson, a former gardener himself but now a harsh critic, raised an eyebrow at the artwork. "You think some drawings from kids will save this garden?" He scoffed in a smooth but cutting tone. Jake's heart plummeted. But he planted his feet firm. "It isn't just drawings, it's our future, a future where our next generation knows the value of planting, nurturing, and growing together," he shot back. He took a moment, using that tension to build his argument. "Every small moment, every meal shared, is a step toward healing and rebuilding this community. If we understand what we're fighting for, we'll find a way to keep this garden alive." The room grew quiet. Judith stood, her energy crackling in the charged air. She spoke with warmth, inviting families to share their stories. Children shared their excitement over what they had grown: snapdragons and lettuce, sunflowers and hope, and memories of laughter poured out like sunlight after rain. Jake observed the shift in expressions throughout the room. Faces that had been hardened began to soften, some even nodding along. As the last child finished speaking, the applause that followed warmed his heart. But just as a sense of victory settled over them, Jake caught sight of Mr. Thompson's scowl. "While all of this is inspiring, the numbers still don't add up. How will you manage this moving forward?" Jake glanced at Judith, and they shared a fleeting moment of understanding. It wasn't done yet. This battle would unravel more than just numbers, it would extend into their community's trust and vision. He took a deep breath, preparing for a response. They were on the precipice of something big, and yet, questions loomed larger than ever. Would they weather the storm together, or would they falter under the pressure? With both hope and apprehension swirling in his heart, Jake prepared to tackle the real fight ahead. The silence in the room felt like a thick blanket, and Jake could sense the tension rising as Mr. Thompson's question hung in the air. How could he explain the intangible value of hope and unity that the garden represented? It wasn't just about dollars and cents, it was about a lifeline for their community. Pushing aside his nerves, he squared his shoulders and opened his mouth to speak. Words began pouring out, tinged with the rawness of his determination. "Mr. Thompson, I understand your concerns. But let me remind you, this garden is more than just an initiative, it's a sanctuary for children who've never seen a tomato grow or a sunflower bloom. It's a space where they can learn the beauty of creation. He looked around the room, eyeing the council members, searching for anyone who might understand his vision. Nurturing plants nurtures people too. Every seed we plant is a lesson. When the kids tend to their garden, they learn responsibility and patience. They're creating memories that will last a lifetime together. Judith chimed in, her voice steady and passionate. We've reached out to local businesses that want to invest in this project. We compare this to their corporate social responsibility efforts. Gardens clean the air, provide food security, and foster social interactions and mental wellness. This is an investment that pays dividends in community trust and engagement. Jake noticed a few council members nodding thoughtfully, their skepticism thawing. Judith's words breathed new life into the gathered crowd. The notion of community wasn't just an afterthought, it was foundational, linking each person in the room to the future of their town. As Judith spoke, Jake's eyes drifted to the children in the back. Their small forms were filled with excitement, and their innocence resonated with everyone who looked their way. Each painted flower and colorful crayon drawing told a story of possibility, of dreams taking root. He could almost hear the laughter echoing in his ears again. However, Mr. Thompson's frown deepened. You can't base a project's value solely on warm feelings and good intentions. If you want this to work, you need a solid plan to back it up, something the town can count on. Jake's heart pounded. Hidden behind that skepticism was a flicker of truth. They needed to show the council they could manage the project sustainably. You're right, he said, locking eyes with Mr. Thompson. We need to have a detailed plan. We will outline costs, fundraising events, and even workshops to engage the community. But we can't do it without your support. Waves of murmurs rippled through the crowd as people whispered among themselves. Sarah, who had been pensively sitting next to him, suddenly blurted out, "What if we host a community event at the garden? We can showcase all the things we plan to do: gardening classes, cooking workshops with fresh produce, and fun activities for families. It could be a day of celebration." The enthusiasm in her voice was contagious, and Jake felt the room vibrate with excitement. Could this be the turning point? Judith smiled at Sarah, her eyes brightening. That's it. We can gather feedback, engage the community, and make them a part of this journey. Jake felt warmth roll through him. They were pulling together, rallying around a dream they shared. But doubt crept back into his mind. But will it be enough? He whispered. Judith turned to him, her face resolute. It will be if we believe in it. And if we keep pushing forward together. The council started to murmur again. The energy in the room shifted as people began advocating for the project. Slowly, a supportive atmosphere started to unfurl. Just as Jake felt hope filling the space, Mr. Thompson stood again. You've stirred something today. But I still need facts to back up that fire. You need to show us the plan. Even the financials can't be ignored. Jake nodded. We can do that. We will present a concrete proposal, one that involves everyone in our community. It's time we made them feel they are a part of this vision. The meeting moved to a close, but as people gathered to leave, he felt a sense of urgency washing over him. They had ignited a spark, but the flame needed fuel, and he was determined to add wood to the fire. As Jake exited the room, the cold night air greeted him, and he couldn't shake off the excitement mixed with anxiety. What would their plan look like? Would it be enough to quench the doubts flooding their way? He felt a resolute stirring inside him. The battle was just beginning, but he knew one thing: together, they would not let this garden wither away. Jake pressed the cool metal of his keys into his palm, thinking about the next steps. How would they gather the resources and trust needed to make this dream stick? And more importantly, how would they turn opposition into allies? As he turned to walk home, the questions loomed, heavy but electrifying. Would they flourish, or would this journey lead them down a darker road? The following day dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the whirlwind of emotions that had swirled in Jake's mind the night before. He woke up with the sun spilling through his window, igniting a spark of hope. But as he sipped his coffee, the weight of responsibility found him again. The urgency to turn the garden project into reality pressed on him, like a heavy storm cloud threatening rain, that he shot out a quick text to Judith and Sarah, summoning them to brainstorm. They needed to meet and form a solid plan before their next council meeting. The air crackled with anticipation as he headed to the small community center where they often gathered. Upon arrival, Jake found Judith and Sarah already seated at a table strewn with papers, sketches of garden layouts, and lists of community resources. Their energy was infectious. Judith smiled up at him, her face aglow with determination. "We've been mapping out ideas," she said. "What do you think?" Jake sank into a chair, sliding his hands over the assorted papers. "I love it. But we need something that truly shouts, 'This matters.' What if we focus on a theme?" Sarah suggested, her eyes lighting up. "We could make it a celebration of growth of both gardens and community. It taps into everything we want." Judith nodded. "Yes, we could incorporate workshops on sustainability, cooking with fresh produce, and even have local artists showcase their work. Make it colorful, inviting." As they bounced ideas around, Jake could feel the tension lifting, his heart swelled with hope. Yet, a nagging voice in the back of his mind warned him that they needed to be thorough. "Okay, but we can't forget the financial side. We must show the council numbers, projections. Everything must be crystal clear." Judith raised an eyebrow. "How do we plan to fund this?" "We need to reach out to our local businesses and explore grants," Jake suggested. "If we can show how the garden benefits them, they might donate supplies or even volunteer their time." The trio worked late into the afternoon, fueled by a shared sense of purpose. They drafted emails, outlined a budget, and prepared visuals that painted their vision for the garden. The more they planned, the more convinced he became that this garden could be the heart of the community. As dusk approached, Jake felt invigorated. They had transformed anxiety into actionable steps. The garden was becoming more than a dream, it was shaping into a bridge that connected everyone: businesses, families, and children. But then a thought jolted him. How would they cultivate support from the council members who remained skeptical? As he shared his worries with Judith and Sarah, they created a plan to set up meetings with those who were on the fence, ready to listen to their vision. "Let us leverage their interests," Sarah suggested. "Don't just show them what the garden can do, but invite them to be part of it. Get them excited." "Exactly," Jake agreed, excitement bubbling within him. "We'll empower them to be champions of this project." But as they finished up, Jake couldn't shake the doubt creeping back into his mind. What if Mr. Thompson's voice echoed louder at the next meeting? What if they didn't sway the council at all? The flickering light from the overhead bulb seemed to mirror the uncertainty in his heart. The pressure loomed large, pushing against the hope they had stoked. As he walked home, his thoughts spun around him. The garden had the potential to uplift so many lives. Yet here he was, grappling with the reality that their dream could crumble under the weight of indifference. With each step, he felt the urgency build. How would he voice the heartbeat of their community amidst the doubts? Would they all stand with him when the moment to act came? Once again, he clutched his keys tightly in his palm, the cool metal grounding him. The garden was out of reach still, but what they had planned felt bigger than any obstacle. The meeting loomed on the horizon, and it was time he challenged himself. Would he be the one to change hearts and transform the community? As he reached his door, uncertainty mingled with hope, and he knew tomorrow was pivotal. What kind of impact would they leave behind? On the day of the crucial council meeting, bright sunlight streamed through the windows of the community center, casting a warm glow on the nervous faces gathered inside. Jake could feel their collective heartbeat, the anxiety, hope, and determination swirling around him. Today was the day to show the town that their little garden project meant more than just soil and seeds. It was about bringing people together, healing, and rebuilding trust. As he stood at the front, he took a deep breath, looking over the sea of familiar faces, some filled with determination, others laced with skepticism. Judith was sitting nearby, her aura radiating confidence. Sarah, with her sketches of vibrant plants, was ready to paint their vision with passion. Together, they were an unstoppable force. Jake stepped forward, heart pounding, and spoke directly from his spirit. Thank you all for being here today. We aren't just asking you to listen, we're asking you to be part of something bigger than ourselves. He noticed Judith nodding at him, giving him the strength to continue. This garden is a chance to create something beautiful, but more importantly, it's an opportunity to grow community and support those who've been through so much. We want to heal together. As he outlined their plan, the energy in the room shifted. He presented photos of community gatherings, the laughter of children digging in the dirt, and local businesses standing beside them in support. Each image echoed a heartfelt story, reigniting memories that many thought had faded. Imagine this garden thriving, not just as a plot of land, but as a hub for creativity, connection, and hope, Jake urged. A place where kids learn life skills and adults find community. When Judith took her turn, her voice rang out clear and unwavering. We've gathered pledges of support from local businesses, and we're excited about working with them to create workshops, gardening classes, cooking with fresh produce, art exhibits in the garden. All of us can contribute. The crowd murmured with interest as faces softened, hearts stirred. Jake felt a surge of excitement. And it's not just about being there in the good times. This garden will remind us that we can flourish, even in tough seasons. If we stand together, nothing will undo the progress we've made. He caught a glimpse of Mr. Thompson, who now wore an expression that hinted at contemplation instead of stubbornness. Suddenly, a young girl raised her hand, her bright eyes shining like sunflowers. I want to help plant the flowers. This innocent voice broke through the tension like a ray of sunlight piercing clouds. Laughter erupted, filling the room, the weight of anxiety lifting. Encouraged, other kids chimed in, me too. I want to make it pretty. More laughter and smiles followed. Even Judith cracked a grin, their spirits soared, and even some of the skeptics' faces began to soften. Just then, Sarah stepped forward, filled with clear conviction. This isn't just about plants or money. We are creating a legacy. On that foundation, we can build a stronger Maplewood. Imagine holding community events, where families make connections over shared meals, art, and laughter. A place where everyone is welcomed and valued. The council members exchanged looks, their defenses crumbling with every heartfelt word. Even if they had come skeptically, their hearts seemed to be swayed by the sheer joy radiating from the group. Jake seized the opportunity. Today, our community has a choice. We can nurture each other and push through our fears, or we can hold on to our doubts and lose this chance to grow. Then he glanced at Mr. Thompson, who had been silent, yet attentive. I understand there are concerns, financial ones, primarily. But consider this, investing in the community isn't just about numbers. It's about the families who share a meal in the garden, the children who laugh while digging in the earth. Those moments will create memories that multiply far beyond the dollars spent. As the room hummed with energy, Jake took a deep breath. So I ask you today, let us take this leap of faith together. We can build a beautiful community together, a garden that thrums with life and vibrancy. Let us show Maplewood that we stand united. The applause that erupted felt like a wave crashing ashore. Tears welled in Jake's eyes as faces beamed back at him with hope. Meanwhile, he caught a glimpse of Judith, her lips curled in a knowing smile, shining brighter than he'd ever seen. It was in that moment that he realized they had done it together. They had sparked something real. As the meeting wrapped up, the council agreed to fund the initial setup but insisted on regular progress updates. With that, Jake felt a surge of relief flood through him. They had won this round. Walking out, the cool breeze wrapped around them like a hug. Jake breathed deeply, letting it all sink in. They were just getting started. His doubts faded as the support of the community surrounded him like a warm embrace. Laughter, ideas, and connection flowed as they realized that together, they were about to plant the seeds for a brighter future. The garden was now not just a dream, it was alive. Jake felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude wash over him. They had turned struggles into strength, whispers of doubt into declarations of trust. As the sun set low, he knew that from every seed they planted, a story would emerge, and from that story, a legacy would bloom. The air crackled with the promise of what was to come. Jake turned, grinning at Judith and Sarah. It's going to be amazing, isn't it? Yes, Judith replied, her eyes sparkling with fervor. It's just the beginning. As they glanced at each other, the bond formed through their shared trials and visions wrapped around them stronger than ever. Hope and possibility thrummed in the air, and for the first time in a long time, they were ready to face whatever came next. Now, it's your turn to keep the momentum going. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss out on more heartwarming stories like this. Hit that like button now to help us grow. Comment below, how did this story resonate with you? What are your thoughts on trusting a community? And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends you never know who needs to hear this message of transformation. Show your support. This is the moment.